me ask you a question about what you see as blind spots of the West when it thinks about security in Africa. So, when I think about it, you mentioned the DRC, and recently, I think about a week ago, um, our State Department said to your government and to you, you need to punish part of your own forces, which the United States assert cooperated with M23 in some attacks inside the DRC. And I don't want to get into a discussion of who did what to whom. Your government has denied that. I'm more interested in the question of what is the Paul Kagame plan if you were to talk to Blinken and to Sullivan, which I know you have done, say this is how, from your perspective, this needs to be fixed. But I'm interested in a more broad question as well. We've seen a lot of coups, Niger, Guinea, various places, in the region, and you've just recently traveled to some of these countries just in the past week. What are we getting wrong in understanding stability in Africa that you think the United States and Europe can, significantly improve on?
Well, to begin with, what I would do if I would be talking to these leaders in those countries, like United States and others, I would start by telling them that they can do much, much better than that. Because in the end, they are really doing nothing. Passing statements of condemnation and blaming this or that without addressing the problem, I think simply adds to the problem, not doesn't address it. So that's what I would start with telling them. And for every problem, there is a root cause. You simply look at the root cause of the problem and what the problem is, and work with the parties involved to address what needs to be addressed, in your sense, and reduce on the politics, on the interest, on this, on that. I mean, some of these things, they just don't go away unless you do what is necessary to be done that underlies the problem. I mean, it doesn't need a lot of capacity to think or what all of us have can serve us to understand the issues like this. So that's what I would tell them. Now, if you extend it across the continent, the main failure on our continent and these other places where there is a failure of governance and security, both of them which are needed for any society to stabilize and function the way it should and the way the people would wish to see happen. So if you look at countries where coup d'etats have been happening, nobody wishes to see coup d'etats happen in any place. There's nothing to celebrate about that. But at the same time, you don't stop there. You just don't condemn coups without even trying to find out, basically, what is it that led to this point? What was it that was lacking for a coup to happen? This is when you start seeing signs of that in governance or lack of security, as we have seen mainly in some of these countries in West Africa. I mean, these are things that anyone can see. You don't need to dig deep to investigate. You can see it. In fact, you can see it before it has happened, and you can tell that something is going to happen in this place or the other. So why can't people, first on our own continent, the Africans ourselves, in fact, which, again, we have talked about that, the way within Africa, Africans can work together to address a problem like we did in Mozambique or in Central African Republic. But with even developed countries, support or involvement the right way, it would happen faster and more easily. So why doesn't it happen? they all concentrate now on condemning. By the way, it is funny, it is in fact ridiculous, because in some cases, they would condemn people in certain places where coups have happened, and be quiet in similar cases. On the
Right.
same, like you see, even the failure of governance, they attack, countries, lack of democracy, lack of freedom, lack of human rights, lack of this. And where some of these are lacking the most, but because of the interests that people have in those countries, it will be muted. Effectively, nothing to be talked about that. So are we really addressing the problems the way they should be addressed, or we are just posturing and talking about, need for this and giving lectures and
Right.
so on
Let,
and so
let me
forth?
try let me try to squeeze in a couple of more quick questions before we go. One big one I think is, in our past discussions, I remember talking to you when you visited Washington for the US Africa Leaders Summit. And at that time, you were beginning to think, about the broader U.S. Rwanda relationship. That relationship had some barriers in it, including Paul Rusesabagina being in prison. Your justice system commuted his sentence. A lot of progress has been made on the stumbling blocks in between Rwanda and the United States. But at the time when you were in Washington, you said, Washington kind of goes up and down. It has attention and then it disappears. And you said it's very inconsistent. I'm interested in whether there's now a consistency of attention in the relationship between the Biden White House and the Biden State Department, over the importance of relations with you and Rwanda, or whether it is something that goes to sleep for a while and then awakens when there's a crisis or a problem. What is what's the terrain of that relationship?
I think you can take my previous statement when you were in Washington. It hasn't changed much. And when I answered that question, I was also conscious that things don't change so easily anyway, in some cases. And with this one, it wasn't going to change. But, and for example, Rusesabagina should not have been a case to quarrel about between the United States and Rwanda anyway, to begin with.
Right.
But it happened. And we dealt with it because it was there to be dealt with. And we tried to do it the best way we could. We got it out of the way.
But even getting beyond that, you're not having, nirvana in U.S. Rwanda relations, is what I'm hearing.
No, not
much. No nirvana. Let me just ask you really. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
You are going to sleep and waking up. This time there hasn't been waking up. It has been.
I'm sure that's going to be tweeted somewhere. And look, the other controversial thing you and I have discussed before is the UK's Illegal Migration Act. Rwanda hosts and brings into Rwanda as part of a relationship with the UK. Asylum seekers come in, and Rwanda has been designated as a safe place and harbor by UK courts. And that's controversial with a lot of people. It's controversial in some, with a judge in Northern Ireland, et cetera. You and I have talked about the environment, the jobs, et cetera, that you're trying to do for these employees. What's interesting to me is that a poll inside the EU has recently said that more than half of EU member states want the same deal with Rwanda, would like to have that kind of relationship. And, it's a complicated subject because asylum and dealing with people that are running away from whatever trauma or circumstance in their life there. But I'd love to get your thoughts on that. And the fact is that despite the controversy that some attach to this practice of moving folks to Rwanda, which I imagine is both economic development, but it's something you're thinking about with regards to population growth. But the fact that a lot of other nations in the EU want it, what are your thoughts about that? Do you want to expand the program?
Yeah, putting the controversy aside, we in Rwanda, we insist on trying to do things the best way we can. And there will be people who criticize, there are others who will appreciate what it is for the fact of it. So we chose to be consistent in our way of trying to do things. One, the fact that there have been debates about whether Rwanda is safe, but in the end, it is what it is. You know it, Steve. UK knows it, Europe knows it, US knows it. Rwanda is actually safe. So being safe does not depend on whether somebody likes us or not. It is a good we have provided to ourselves and to our country, and it exists. So let's put it aside. The other thing, what is lacking is the level of development that takes care of our people the way we want, or that would take care of other people who come here, whether they are migrants or whatever, and wherever they come from, to also be taken care of the way they want or we want. That's another thing on the side. So the issue of migration and how we dealt with it started way beyond UK. In fact, even now, today, we are processing migrants who were stuck in Libya, who were trying to cross into Europe and got stuck there, or others were dying in the Mediterranean. And we provided that safe haven for people to come here or be processed through here to wherever they wanted to go in 2018. It's not a recent thing. And that time, we had no agreement with anyone, so there wasn't even anyone going to pay for it except ourselves. The people worked for these migration institutions, international institutions, or UNHCR, and so on and so forth. So since 2018, hundreds of thousands of people have been brought by air from Libya to Rwanda. This is what UK, I think, noticed, that there was another way of dealing with this problem, which had turned into a huge problem for them, as it is for the whole of Europe. So they asked us if that could be expanded to deal with such a problem as they have it. And we accepted, because we have had a good relationship before with the UK. In terms of our development, they have been supporting our development for many years, and so on and so forth. So our people discussed, but then we had to discuss it. How do we do it the best way so that we don't cause any injury to anybody in the process, but solve the problem for United States, for UK, for migrants, and for ourselves. So UK provided, because we told them, for example, that we cannot bring people here because of our limited means. We're not going to be able to look after them effectively as you've been looking after them in your own country, except now for relocation. So that's how this development component on this part of the agreement came about. But anyway, support for our development was going on even before. Doing this. So now we are looking at, so the debates that are going on in the UK or in Europe or wherever about whether Rwanda is safe, for us, it is immaterial. We understand who we are, we know what we have here, we know we can provide the security to anyone, governance, and so what we lack is different. It is the means to apply to it for development of these people. So when people are there debating, is Rwanda safe, is it that? Well, that becomes politics.
Well, it's very popular with a lot of other EU states. Look, I'm getting the signal that we need to bring this to conclusion. I can talk, as you know, for hours with you on these issues, and really grateful for your time. I want to talk about sports and what you've done with sports as economic development, and your sports diplomacy in Guinea and Senegal. There are a lot of things that we've got to leave for the next discussion we have, but I really want to thank you for joining the Global Security Forum. I'm excited to see the airport in 2027, and I want to go to a future gorilla naming ceremony, and I'll leave the to the audience to figure all that out. But
Thank you.
Paul Kagame, thank you so much. Great to be with you again.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. Hope to see you next time.